Welcome to week 2 of Church History 2, Reformation and Modern Church History. And so in this short video, we're going to drop back to week 1 actually, and I want to bring us up to speed. And so I'm going to make a couple of videos for this week, but this one will deal with the Protestant Reformation, and this was last week, and it's almost a crime to study the Protestant Reformation in 1 week. But that's what we did, and we have to move along because this is an 8-week course. And so the Protestant Reformation, just a few thoughts, again, to help you in your study. The 4 different ways we approached last week the Protestant Reformation were these. Number 1, the German Reformation, being Martin Luther particularly as the leader. The Swiss Reformation, started by Ulrich Zwingli, and carried forward by John Calvin and his associates. Then the Anabaptist or Radical Reformation, the greatest leader of which was Menno Simons. And then lastly, the English Reformation, which again in England, and which produced the Anglican or the Episcopal Church. So when we look as an overview to the Protestant Reformation, a couple of thoughts that are worth your consideration. And first of which is that we as Protestants, and I am thinking that virtually everyone taking this course is a Protestant. Perhaps you have a Catholic background and certainly have influenced by Catholicism or knowledge of it. Perhaps you were raised Catholic and are now Protestant, but we, most of us, approach the gospel and approach the Bible and approach Christianity from the Protestant perspective. And so it's really important for us to understand the factors at work in what we call the Protestant Reformation. This is not just a historic thing. This is not just something for looking back, but it certainly has modern implications insofar as our understanding of the gospel, the understanding of the church. And you have the 4 different criteria that are listed in your textbook. What does it mean to get saved? What is the church? How does the church operate? What is the meaning of the Christian life? Things of that sort. These are all central to our understanding of the Protestant Reformation. So let's talk real quickly about these 4 different wings of the Protestant Reformation as they come to us today. And they each have a remarkably distinctive characteristic and bear your further study and investigation. Luther, of course, is the firebrand through whom God sparked the Protestant Reformation, and that produced or resulted in that which we call today the Lutheran Church. But the influence is far beyond that. And his primary thrust is justification by faith alone. Not justification by faith simply, but justification by faith alone. And that's what distinguishes the Protestant version of the gospel from the Roman Catholic version. Because if you ask any good Catholic, they'll say, do you believe you're saved by faith? And they'll say, absolutely, we're saved by faith. But the question is, are we saved by faith alone? In other words, do our works augment, add to, and complete our salvation? Now, I'll just say this further, that this is an ongoing discussion. And so a pure Reformation understanding of the gospel is very, very important. But we're not going to stop there. I'm going to move along, and I just commend it to your study. The second, in the order of the book, actually, your textbook is the Anabaptist or the Radical Reformation. We are far more akin to the Anabaptists, the Radical Reformations, than we might think. There is a great book that I've read a couple of times, actually, called The Reformers and Their Stepchildren. It's by a guy by the name of Leonard Verduin. I commend it to you, The Reformers and Their Stepchildren. And what he goes through is the basic tenets of Anabaptist faith, which really come down to us today and is more in line in many ways with what we would generally call evangelical Christianity today. And I'm using terms here that you need to define for yourself, but having to do with the faith that would be a free church. A free church is as opposed to a state church. The Reformers, in fact, did not break the statist view of church and state. In other words, to be a German was to be a Lutheran, to be a Scandinavian was to be a Lutheran, to be Swiss, and in certain places in France was to be Reformed, as Calvin would define that. To be in England was to be a part of the Church of England, church and state. The Anabaptists broke that mold by saying there should be variation and latitude to allow for not subscribing to what would be called the established church. That's the Anabaptists, and they may seem rather peculiar to you, but as they mainstreamed more and more, they became ultimately what would be called the Baptists. And the Baptists being not the Southern Baptist or the American Baptist, but those who believe in believers' baptism as opposed to infant baptism, which of course is Lutheran and Reformed and also Episcopalian. The third branch that we see of the Reformation is the Swiss Reformation. There's an individual that is almost completely left out by your textbooks. He's mentioned but not touched on very much, and it's Ulrich Zwingli. He was actually the first of the Swiss reformers, and after him came Calvin, and Calvin codified and systematized the faith, of course, with his great institutes of the Christian religion, and Calvin has become an institution in and of himself. But Zwingli was the first of the Swiss reformers. He approached the gospel, the same gospel, but he approached it from a different angle than Luther did. Luther came from the angle of Augustinian monkhood. He was an Augustinian monk. He was in a monastery, whereas Zwingli comes from a military family and was the son of an officer in the military, and always never quite had the problem with state involvement that Luther had. He just never had a problem with it. And interestingly enough, Zwingli himself died going into battle in the defending his homeland. But of course, I don't need to say a whole lot about Calvin. I trust that you in your theological studies have studied some of the contribution that John Calvin has made to Reformed faith and to Christian faith. The last is the English Reformation, and it took, again, an entirely different tack because, as you may well know, Henry VIII, who was the King of England, ran into problems with the Catholic Church, not over doctrine, not over what the Bible says or what church history says or what canon law says, but over his ability to divorce his wife and to marry another so that he could bear an heir, a son, for the English throne. And as a result of that, his own moral dilemma produced a crisis that then the church sought to catch up with, and you produced kind of a dual headship then in England of the king and the Archbishop of Canterbury. They do believe in apostolic succession because the Archbishop of Canterbury was originally ordained or set in place, hands were laid on him by the Pope or papal apostolic succession from, as they would say, Peter. So they remain quasi-Catholic in that sense of the word. Again, the study of the Protestant Reformation is fascinating. We need to not leave it behind and consider it to be simply dead history. It is alive. It is important. It defines our understanding of the gospel, our understanding of the church, our understanding of the Christian life. So many things depend on our correct understanding of the faith once delivered to the saints. Let's study it together and let's grow. God bless you.